All right, suppose you have an invocable action or some other means of getting data, and it produces a stream of interesting data like this. It's not yet a Salesforce object or a Salesforce record. It's just data. In this case, we've got an address, a last name, and a first name. But you want to get it into Salesforce records. Let's say that we want to get this, we want to take this stream and we want to make it a contact. That'd be very easy to do in code, but in Flow, what we really want to happen is we want to be able to get that stream of data and then have it show up declaratively. So if we go here, you can see I want to be able to pick address, first name, last name right from here, right like this, address, first name, last name. Now, if we always knew that the data stream was always going to have this exact format, it was always going to be address, it was always going to be last name, it was always going to be first name, this is a very easy thing, a very easy problem to solve. We would simply build an invocable action that had an address field, a last name field, and a first name field. But what if you don't know what stream your source is going to come up with? For example, suppose that you were trying to create a forms processor or forms reader, and you wanted to let your users define the field sets for these, like literally pieces of paper that were scanned in, PDFs, that kind of thing. If you're going to build a good tool, then that has to support an infinite variety of these sources, and yet so much of that data your users are still going to want to stick into Salesforce records. So what I'm going to show you now is how you can use the power of the Flow development environment to create a solution that can handle any stream of key value pairs and let you create flows that your users can run fully declaratively to map that data. So there's two flows that I'm going to show you here, because what I'm going to the process, the pattern that I'm going to use here is metaprogramming. The action, the reason, let's work our way backwards. Why do we have this list here of exactly the matching fields, address, first name, last name? Well, we're getting it from the output of this action. And this action was automatically generated. So that's the first sort of really interesting thing about how we're going to solve this problem. I did not code this up. I have a flow that generated this. This is metaprogramming. That's what the pattern is. So this particular action, if we go take a look at it, it's called process form my contact form fields. Process form my contact form fields. And you can see that it is outputting this my contact form fields data type. And if we go look at the data type, you can see that this is what's producing that neat pick list in Flow Builder. It's basically automatically detecting that this invocable action spits out this custom data type, and this custom data type has address, last name, and first name. Now, both of these were auto-generated, and the reason that I decided to use auto-generation is because the next time it might not be address, last name, and first name. So let's go and generate, let's imagine that instead of a contact form, we come in and we've got an order form. So let's create a new configuration here called generate order form intake classes, and let's call this my order form fields, and let's just change this to let's see, quantity. I'm just picking some things that might might be relevant to a stream of incoming untyped data. One thing to be very careful about right now, since you're creating actual attribute property names, things that will work here in the string, like having a space, will cause failures. So, and there's not enough error checking in this technology right now. It's pretty previewy. So. Just be careful for that. For what it's worth, the values that I'm typing here are not actually necessary. Because all we care about here are the keys, but because the technology is set up right now to deserialize this into a map of string. So the formatting of this needs to be a serialization of a string map. And this isn't really intended to be directly used here in an invocable action. This is more intended to be triggered by the creation of some data process somewhere when you want to, and I want to automatically generate a couple classes so that I can use this new custom data type in Flow. Okay, so we've got this here. Let's save this as generate order classes. All right, and let's run it. And it's done. And so we're now going to go and take a look at our newly created classes. One warning here, this is an asynchronous process right now, so it can take a couple minutes for these classes to show up. Let's see if we've got them. All right, let's refresh. And there they are. So there is my order form fields data type, quantity SKU ID shipping mode, and an action that will take a map of key value pairs and output it using this data type. That's right here. This particular action has some sort of rando inputs. The actual implementation is going to be pretty specific to the situation. But the general idea is you input some sort of data structure, something you're going to scan, something coming from outside of Salesforce, and now we have a custom data type that matches that particular set of keys that we can use. And so if we go back, okay, and let's go grab this new action. There's the order form fields. And I'm just going to fill some garbage information in here. We go here to create records. And we're going to create an order this time. And for something like I'll use Pricebook 2 ID. So right here we can go here, traverse, and there is the data. So coming out of that processing action, you can now use all of your dynamic data fully declaratively in all flows. So let's go take a look at how this is done. All right, the two main pieces of this are this generate custom classes, which calls deploy apex class. So let's go look at deploy apex class. What deploy apex class basically lets you do is pass in the text of the class, literally this stuff. You can pass this all in as one honking string, give it a name, specify the test level. Right now this is set to default to no test run. Okay, so we're using the great metadata service. Now you can't use the typical easy CRUD stuff with Apex classes because they've got an extra level of security. So what we need to do is create a deployment package. We literally generate a zip file and then deploy it using metadata deployment. And the generation of the zip file uses some zip utilities that Andy has included in the metadata service. And you can see here that we are literally painstakingly assembling a package.xml, a zip file. We have to create the meta file. I've got down here a sort of standard package where all I do is insert the class name, and here is the standard meta file information. So, and that means that's why all that you need to do is pass in the class text. The zip file is then base64 encoded, and then it's ready to deploy. So that's what's happening sort of at the deployment stage. One level higher, what we're passing in here is we're passing in, as you recall, we're passing in a serialized key value pair map and the name that we want to use. Now down here is the template for the processing class, because 90% of this is the same regardless of what you're working with. Only in a few places the name of the class differs. One case it was related to contacts, the next time it was related to orders, and then the name of that custom data type has to be inserted in here. So we do that with just a couple lines of code right here, swapping those in. And then to build the data type itself, that's just generated with some string processing right here. We're sticking in the Aura enableds because these are pretty straightforward. Now, all of this is just strings. A logical next step to evolve this would be to allow type information to be passed in. But in a lot of cases, you're just not going to have type information when you are looking at, this just isn't going to come in with type information from a lot. Now there are a number of flow tools you can use to convert from string to date and things like that. There's some actions that exist now and more that can be built. So if you find that you're running into some obstacles there, put some requests up at unofficialsf.com or the Salesforce Automation Trailblazer community, and hopefully we can get you some actions. So that's basically what's going on here to generate these classes. That map string, that serialized string comes in here. It's deserialized to a map, and then that information is used to build the strings that are then deployed to become brand new Apex classes. So very cool stuff. Opens up a lot of new doorways, and good luck experimenting with it.